Okay, so first of all, who of you is actually in web development? Okay, and who of you has actually implemented some kind of list like this one here, which we know from Amazon, or like this one from the bug tracker on Forge, or like this one from Typo-free backend? Who of you has implemented something like that? Only one? 2, 3, 4? Okay, and how often did you do that? Only once, or like this one very often? Okay, so basically we found out that we had to do that in almost every project we were working at. And so about 4 years ago our boss came up with the idea of making an extension that could do most of the work once and we can reuse it. So we thought that saving some time and energy and money in that project is something we want to have. And so we came up with this extension. If you look at the main parts of lists, then you will find out that it's always about the same. We will present you the parts that we thought are essential for every list. First of all, if you look at the list in a very abstract way, it's basically a collection of rows you want to present to the user. And sometimes you have not only rows, but you have columns. And if you take those two parts together, you get something we call a cell. So rows are the horizontal part and columns are the vertical part, and taking both in one grid you have those cells. And sometimes you have something we call a header above the list to give some information on what is displayed in the list. But as you all might know, the lists are basically not static. You don't simply present a list which is always the same, but you have some interactivity for the user, like you want to sort the data within the list, or you want to filter the data, and of course you want to limit the result sets. So first of all, you have some kind of data source you want to display. This could be a database or an XML file, or we recently used a lot of Solr. So we have Solr results to be displayed in a list. And what we call magic here is our extension, and what comes out of the extension is the rendered list. No? Then normally, you know that from many interfaces, if you click on something in the list, then your data should be sorted, like here. Or you want to restrict the results to some filter. So you only show part of the data. And as you have a lot of data within your list, you normally want to have a pager that cuts your results into small pieces through which you can thumb. Another feature which we often use is aggregation, like within a shopping basket or something, where you want to display a price. So we came up with a feature that we can aggregate data within our lists. And taken all together, those requirements are repeated here. We want to have the possibility to connect to multiple data sources. We want to render rows, cells, and headers within our list. We want to sort and filter and limit our results, use a pager, and sometimes we want to aggregate data. So those were the basic requirements that we had when we started to implement the extension. And it was around 2010, I think, when the first prototypes of XBase and Fluid had been published. And we wanted to put our extension upon this framework because the idea was to be able to transfer the extension to flow free once it is ready for use in productive context. So if you take a look at this very abstract sketch of our architecture, we have typo-free at the bottom as the main framework or basic architecture. And upon this CMS, we have XSpace and Fluid. Who of you has actually worked with XSpace? Okay, so for the rest of you, XSpace is kind of a basic framework for developing extensions within Typo3, and it uses much of the technology that is used within Flow3. It's actually a back part of most of the technology you have in Flow3 to enable developers to have a smooth migration from the Typo3 world to the Flow3 world. And as we used XSpace quite early and there were some design flaws and some things that changed very fast at the beginning, we put something on top of it which we call PTXSpace. It's basically a tool where we put all the adaptations of XSpace and all our extensions into, so that we can stay up to date with XSpace updates and they don't break our extensions every time they are published. And then on top of all these things, we have our extension about which we will talk here. So after giving you a short introduction on what was the motivation for us to write the extension, I will show you the basic features of PTXList. As an overview, we have this screenshot here. Some of you might know static info tables from Typo3. Do you notice things? Where your country data and currency and all kind of things are stored in there. It's called static as it normally doesn't change. And as this data ships with every Typo3 installation, we built a demonstration application upon it so that everybody who is using Typo3 can use the demonstration. And we came up with this demonstration interface. We have a block of filters on top, where you can, for example, filter for a country name or for a continent. And you have the list itself below, which is not that useful, but it shows some countries with other properties like capital, the ISO coding and phone number. And we use this to get an impression of what PTXList is able to do. As you have the filters, you have the headers with the sorting, you have the list, you have this aggregate row which actually aggregates phone numbers, which is not that useful, but you can show how it works. And we have the pager to limit our results. And we shipped this demo application with the extension, so you can install it within 5 minutes. We will show you how it works. Coming back to the filters, we have the idea that you can arrange multiple filters within what we call a filter box. And all those filters within the filter box interact with each other. So if you select like a subcontinent, the capitals will be restricted to only those ones that correspond to the selected continent. So they are connected with each other, and all this functionality is out of the box. You don't have to write a single line of code. It's just set up in TypoScript. Yeah, and the list itself, as I said, it has those headers which can be used for sorting. We can have a single sorting field like here, where we only sort by capital, or we can have multiple sorting fields, as we see here, where we can sort by local name or whether it's a UN member or not. And Daniel will just give us a short demonstration how everything works in real life.
At least I try to. So this is the thing in live. As Michael already introduced, we have this filter box at the top, the list and the pager, and they are all three separate content elements. So you can only put a list or a filter box on a page and leave the other things out. So this is this static info table country example. So in this case, we can just filter this list for Asian countries, and then we can this filter here beneath this continent filter, the subcontinent filter, is also limited only to Asian countries. So I can just filter another here and filter another there, this one, for sure. So we limit this filter only for one entry, and also reset this filter, and we can sort this by any of the columns, and for sure we can also change the pages. And all of these things you see here, you don't have to implement, you just have to configure the columns and the filters. It's only 2-3 lines of TypoScript, and everything is ready to use. And what is also ready to use, what is not introduced yet, is the export functions. We have exports for CSV, for Excel, and also for PDF. And here you just add a content element for PDF export, and this renders a link in the first place, and when you click on it, you get a PDF export of the list. So nothing of that has to be implemented, it's just there. You have only to configure it in Typos 3 and in TypoScript. And so you are really quick by adding a list to your application of anything you want. As Michael already said, we have backends for SQL to do SQL queries. We have backends for Solr at the moment, and for X-based repositories. And it's possible to also query other data sources like external SQL or external other database files via the dball extension or something. Okay, that's the live demo.
So, I will just give you a short introduction on how it works. If you want to put a list on a page, there are 2 things you have to do basically. First of all, you have to create a little TypoScript setup, which configures the page. It says where the data comes from, which columns you want to have, which templates you want to use to skin it, because it doesn't always look the same. You can use arbitrary styling for it. And the second part, or second step you have to do, is insert some plugin content elements which show the list on your website. So this little sketch should give you an impression on how it works. You have an arbitrary data source, like a database or Solr XML files. You have this list identifier which says how the configuration is named. And you have some lines of TypoScript setup. And you put a plugin as a content element on your page, and that renders the list. So, who of you is familiar with TypoScript? Oh, okay. So, for the others, TypoScript is the configuration language or templating language of Typo 3. I think it's one of the of the best parts of Typo 3. For the beginner, it's a little complicated, and there are very many waterfucks per minute if you work with it, but after getting in touch with it, you see that it's really powerful and you can do a lot of stuff. And we thought that it's a good idea to use this language for the configuration of our extension. So you add a new extension template on your page, and we have a lot of basic settings that ship with PTX list. That makes it easy for you to configure the lists. And after that, you set up some lines of TypoScript yourself, which contain the data backend that should be used. It basically describes to which data source you want to connect, and it holds the connection parameters like username or password for the database. Then you set up some data fields, which is the description of the data in the source language. So if you have an SQL database, you set up the table you want to use for a field and the field name itself. And the third part is the columns you want to display in the list. We differentiate between data fields and columns, as you might perhaps show multiple fields in one column. So this is separated in the configuration, And last but not least, you can set up some filters. I will just show you how it looks like in TypoScript. If you have worked with Backspace, you will know that there is a common namespace for Backspace extensions which starts with plugin .tx underscore whatever your extension is called .settings. And per convention, this is the namespace where Backspace searches for the extension settings it uses. And within this namespace, we set up a namespace list config, which holds all configurations for your list. Sometimes you don't only want to display one list on a page, but many lists. And to be able to differentiate between those lists, we have our own namespace, which we call a list identifier. And with that identifier, you can set up as many configurations as you like on a single page. And within this scope of this namespace, you have to put your configuration. So as I said, first of all, we have to configure the data backend. We ship a pre-configuration for every backend that you can include with this inclusion line here. So if you want to work with typo3 as a data backend and you want to use the typo3 database tables, this line is all you need. So it will grab the database connection from typo3 and use the password and username and everything else you set up in your local conf, and then you are done with the backend. And the next part is you have to define the tables you want to use. Like in our example above, we use static countries. And so you come up with this configuration and use static countries as the tables, and that's it. The next part, as I said, are the data fields. We define which table fields from static countries we want to use. So we have this namespace fields, and within this namespace we can define as many fields as we like. They always have a name and the table we want to use and the field within this table. If you're using SQL, you can also define your own SQL snippet as a special value within this configuration. So for example, you can do aggregation or some renaming or concatenation or whatever you can do with SQL, and it will be used as a field. The third part are the columns. The columns again are the mapping from the fields within the database to the rendering of the list in the front end. So for a simple example, we only use one field, the English name of the country here in our first column, and the phone column within our second column. And after doing that, we are ready to set up the content element. This is all configuration you need. I don't know, about 10 lines of TypoScript or something. And we can now put a content element on the page you want to show the list. And this is done using basic typo3 technology. You click on the plus sign and you get this form for selecting the plugin you want to insert. And we have the XList plugin here. It ships in two versions. We have the XList uncached, which is normally the thing you want to use. And if you have a page with a lot of traffic and lists that normally don't change once they have been called, you can use a cached version, which is much faster once it has been rendered with the parameters in the URL. And here we come to the part where you have to select the list identifier. I will switch back. Oops, once more. We have called it info tables, and it should show up within the selection once you did everything right. So you don't have to remember it, you can just select it. And then you can do a lot of other configuration, but it's not that important here. After doing this, you get this list on your website. No line of PHP code, just a little TypoScript configuration, and everything is done. So, as I said before, we don't only want to display a list, we want to have a little interactivity for the list. So we can add a little more configuration to our TypoScript, which is in the namespace filters. And within the filters you can set up as many filter boxes as you like. Imagine a search engine where you have this quick search form on every page, and you have this advanced search link on a special search page. So you can set up one filter box that holds the quick search, and you can set up another filter box that holds all the advanced search, like restriction of date or topic or whatever you want to implement. And all you have to do to configure the filter is tell PTXlist which prototype filter you want to use. These prototypes hold all the configuration in the background, so you don't have to repeat yourself when you configure the filters. And after that, you can do some changes on this prototype, like you can set the filter identifier or what it should be labeled and on which field it operates. So with 3 lines of code, you have implemented a filter like this that shows up above your list, and that does all the work for you. If you want to have it, it's persisted in your session. So if the user returns on a list, the data he entered in the filter will show up again, and the list will stay in the condition that it had been once the user visited before. And as the list elements, you can insert the filter element the same way as above. You have to insert the content element, select the list identifier, and then you have to select filter box as the type of plugin you want to have, insert the name of the filter box, and the filter will be shown on the page. Another widget that you don't have to configure that ships out of the box is the pager. You can simply select pager as the plugin type, and your list will have this pager at the bottom that you can configure in many ways, whether it should show all the pages or just the first 3 and some of the middle where you are just navigating and some of the end. And all of those things that you see here, you can easily use templates to make it look the way you want to have it. Sorting also works out of the box. You don't have to do anything for it. As long as you don't say that the column cannot be sorted, it can be sorted automatically. And the header, if you click on the header, it will sort your data within the list. Works the other way around. If you click twice, it just turns around to sorting. So okay, that's how the basic features of PTXlist work. I said before that we use TypoScript because we think it's a neat configuration language, and I will show you some advanced features that ship with TypoScript out of the box. So let's say you have a classic CRUD application. Is CRUD a familiar term to you? Like create, read, update, delete. It's if you implement a web application with interactive elements, it's some of the basic things. You have a list with items, and you click on edit, and you want to edit the data, and you click on show, and you want to display the data. And all this can be easily implemented with PTXlist and some lines of TypoScript. You can basically set up columns with any TypoScript that you know from Typo 3, like COA elements or any rendering, arrays and everything you know from TypoScript. And you can use get and post parameters as additional filters with TypoScript. I will show you how to render an image within your list. Who of you is familiar with the COA? Yeah, certified integrators should know it. Thanks. And we have some TypoScript configuration that gives us this little image in front of our list column. And of course, you want to have some links. So if you click on a text within the list, you want to jump to another page where you have an edit form or something else. So this is the configuration you can use here. I think it's not very useful to go into details here, as you are perhaps not that familiar with TypoScript, but it's easily for integrators to use that. And you have this link here that you can use for further details in your list. Who of you has used Fluid templates? Okay, it's a templating language that ships with XSpace and will be the templating language of Flow 3, or is the templating language of Flow 3. And we used it for our extension so that you can exchange all the templates that we have in the background and adapt them so that they fit to your needs and to your customer's corporate design. This is one example of a Fluid template that we adapted for the backend. It's basically everything you see here is XList, and we just made it look and feel of the Typo 3 backend. So, as I mentioned before, the extension ships with a lot of demonstration lists that you can load and put in your page and take a look at how everything works. We think that that's a better way to demonstrate the power of the extension than to write a lot of documentation, which we also have, but this is a more practical approach to get in touch with PTX list. So after installing it, you have another static template called demo list package, and within this package you have a lot of list identifiers set up that let you that explains to you some of the more powerful features. Daniel mentioned export, which ships with the demo lists. We also have structured lists that you can have main headings within the lists and some structured content below it. And we have some examples of more complicated filters. The extension has huge documentation which covers all the TypoScript configuration parameters that you can set. And it's very easy to use. You have this PDF table of contents that you can expand, and you can click through the configuration parameters very easily. One extension that is mainly based on PTX list is a gallery extension called Yak. We will present it to you tomorrow, and Yak gives a good introduction or example of how you can use XList in a very advanced way, as we do all the filtering and rendering within Yak with PTX list. It's also based on XSpace. Yeah, if you want to join us tomorrow at 11, I think same room, you can see what you can do with PTX list if you are used to little XSpace programming. So if you want to use the extension, we have some further information for you on a dedicated website. It's xlist.punkt.de. There are some examples on it and some further documentation. We also have a project on Forge, which holds a bug tracker, and we have We have a repository on GitHub where you can find the development version, which is always a little ahead of the version that we put the TAR. So that's it. We come now to the questions and answers, and I hope you have some questions and we can answer them. Yeah.
How can I download the presentation?
How you can download the presentation?
Yes.
I think that it's available on SlideShare, and I don't know if you collect the presentations of the conference. You collected. Okay, so it should be available on the conference website.
There is a link below the schedule announcement where you can click, not now but in an hour, on a link to the SlideShare where we put the slides up. Okay.
Is there a way to integrate this extension and working
as backend module? Yes, it's also usable in the backend module. In the backend module, it's kind of different, and you need honestly some PHP code, because this is extension, as we showed it, is separated in parts, and in the backend you don't have the structure of plugins or content elements. You only have one controller, one backend controller. But we have a really powerful interface to integrate the whole list structure and everything that is done by XList into your own backend extension. So you can use you can use the list as in your backend extension or as backend list. And at least in our gallery example, we have also a style sheet and template to let it look like a backend list. Sorry?
We have a backend tool that we can configure TypoScript tables that we want to use. Like in the from the plugin, we configure the extension like impossible, not set countries, this is the front end. And also in the backend, can configure backend module that we and then choose a table that you want to use?
Yeah, the problem is that in a backend module is currently always something that you do exactly for that purpose, but it's only some lines of PHP code to integrate a list with PDX list into your special backend plugin or backend module. We are here the next 2 days. If you have questions on that, we can show you that part, and it's really easy.
The sorting in the plugin, I don't see a way to configure the types of the data. The actual text and number is sort by sending, but how about the frequencies or some of the stuff? And how do we know the type of the fields?
The fields that are sorted.
Yes.
That's a part of the configuration. By default, it sorts by as Michael explained. You can combine in one column different fields from the database, and by default, it's sorted by the fields as you use it from the database in your column. But you can also define a lot of things, like in which order it is sorted. You can stick some fields to ascending or descending that should not change. You can give defaults. You can do a lot of advanced configuration there. Our idea was that you can set up a list with very few lines of TypoScript, but you can also configure everything to your needs.
Any other question?
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Oh. Yeah.
I have one question related to the website that has the content with multiple languages. Does the extension list can work with the other language in the content in other language?
No. That's a problem yet, but not. The question was that if you have multiple languages in the list, to switch between these languages automatically to the whole typos-free configuration of language on this page. Okay, that's not possible yet. That's not our fault. It's the problem of XBase. It's not multi-language yet. So in this case, possibility could be to have different plugins of the same list for different languages on the same page, and only show this plugin with that list to the selected language. But I know the XBase guys are working on that issue. So as soon as they can use multi-language, the list also can use it.
So,
Okay.
No more question? Thank you very much, then. You clap.
You want to thank you?